Howdy. So, was it Monday afternoon? Woke up, pretty bad migraine. I think allergies, maybe even a mild stint of depression, but all normal stuff. So, just getting out in the rabbitry. Gonna uh, dosing the rabbits still with a little bit of, I think, snuffles they got going on. I'm gonna dose as long as I have medicine for. Excuse me, as long as I have medicine for. So it was a rough weekend for me for no particular reason. All same factors, just, So I thought I'd do a little longer video. One of my, my therapeutic videos here as I'm working today. Uh, I probably should just start by just really just stating how thankful I am to be who I am, what I am, and for what I have going. Because it's a lot, individually and comparatively. So I want not to complain. Uh, yeah. And, I'm hoping, I'm not hoping, I know it will be a success story as far as it depends upon me. So I just keep keeping on. I think that's the one thing, well, not even that. I mean, the power to keep trying isn't even mine. But I think the willingness to keep trying might be mine. But not even that, right? So yeah, it's interesting because everything that I am and that I have isn't, you know, it doesn't come from me. So it's a very interesting situation. Is it that drive? Like I said, is it that drive in me that's keeping me going? Not really. Not really. Which is a good thing because I think that I find a lot of confidence in that. I could put confidence in that. Some days like today or worse, you don't have it. I don't have it. So And that's a normal thing. For me, anyway. Gotta knock the little crumbs of the powder solution at the bottom. Shake it up real good. That's not the right cap. A. Okay. That's the right cap. Okay. Let's see, guys. Break it up. That's better. And shake. I do have things mentally mapped out as far as what, what I'm working towards, with all the changes and environmental shifting that's been happening. It's been hard for me to get into a rhythm. That's probably why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling today. I even have a major shift here on the horizon I'll be looking into this week. Just a whole nother shift due to environmental factors. I just know I have to make. It's just time to make it, so I'm gonna make it. And all indicators show, just keep making those kind of adjustments and keep on keeping on. But that's kind of what these videos are for. I think best case scenario, in a year or two, or even somewhere closer in the future, I take a look at my videos that I'm doing and that I'll be doing, and be like, yep, remember what was going on while you were doing that? Remember how you were feeling? And how did you make it? Wash, rinse, improve and repeat, right? That's about half. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Positive. Another positive thing about it is I tend not to stay down too long. I have little bouts, feeling down, and then I get up and I go hard. I think I'm working on that. I'm trying to stay more consistent instead of skyrocketing. I think I'm working on it. I think that's more sustainable for longer. I mean, tomorrow will tell, but usually when I get the feeling down, it's at least 2 or 3 days. The fact that I'm up today and doing a video is a good sign. But I've learned not to fight it either. The body's just saying, "Let me rest for a little bit," you know, and don't be kicking yourself while you're down as much as possible. We'll see. When I left Sacramento in 2008, early 2008, I want to say February. I know because it was right after New Year's. I just had this overwhelming feeling. I knew everything that I was doing was leading to everything I was getting that I wasn't liking. I just knew it. And I wanted to get away from it. I wanted to get away from what I was doing. So I left the environment. It made sense. right? It was part of the equation. I can't, of course, it was mostly me. Truthfully, I probably wouldn't have been able to make any changes if I hadn't got out of the environment first, because that's where it started. How I even left was questionable, because it's almost like whew, I took a good portion of the environment with me, almost. In ways, I took a good portion of my problem with me, meaning the way that I left. I left on a big rig 18 wheeler with a certain someone who was driving it, and that was my way out. Didn't end very well. Well, depends on how you look at it. It got me out, but it that blew up pretty pretty bad. So yeah, and when that blew up, I had that epiphany. I definitely had that epiphany when that blew up. But a short while before that blew up, I remember being in the cab of that big rig while we were on the highway somewhere in the middle of the United States, driving. I'm crying. They didn't know, but I'm back there. I was just miserable inside. And, I was praying. I wanted to change. I was tired of who I was. I really was. And I believe it went something to the effect of I didn't care what I had to do. I just was, I wanted to change. Something to that effect. So when I found myself handling things the way I always had, which was at some point blowing up, it was like a crossroad. Because that blow up, by all rights, could have been my last. The arresting sheriff told me, he's like, I could have killed you for what you was doing. And he said, quite honestly, I don't know why I didn't. And I proceeded to cuss in his face and blah blah blah. But I went through probably the worst emotional state I've ever been in my life, preceding that, probably for the next week or two. I hadn't thought about this in a while. Yeah, so I was, I believe about day 3 or 4. I'm in jail, of course. About day 3 or 4, I signed up just to see the shrink. I don't think I had ever, my mom had took me to see, psychiatrist as a kid because I was angry, but I wouldn't talk to him. Go figure. Um, but yeah, I signed up when I was in there, and there in Red Bluff County Jail, there was a black psychiatrist. I ended up seeing him some years later in Food Max, and I had to thank him. He was kind of put off because why is this guy come talking like he didn't remember me? But I told him he really helped me by what I'm about to tell you. So I'm in the office. I believe I'm handcuffed and everything because they don't want people in there, right? Anyway, so I'm handcuffed. The doctor comes in and he's like, "So, what are you in here? What do you want to talk to me about?" I don't know, man. I think I got big problems, man. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm trying to watch myself, take care of myself, trying to do better, but I keep on screwing up big time. I think something's wrong with me. Something to that effect. Probably more explicit language, but that was the gist of what I told him. And he looked at me and he said, I won't ever forget this. But still, I may be paraphrasing. I may not get it exactly word for word, but he asked me about three questions. He said, I believe he asked me, you been in a gang? I was like, yeah, kind of. He's like, you ever been shot? It's like, no. There's another question I'm going to have to think about. You ever been shot? It's not coming to me. It'll come to me. I just haven't thought about it in so long. Then he said, you seem fairly intelligent. I don't think anything's wrong with you. You need to get your shit together. And he kind of watched for my reaction. It froze me. I looked and, probably got wide eyed. I was like, huh, never thought of that. At least it never been said to me like that. And I don't think I might have said how, but I don't think I said anything. I was just like, how do I do that? Maybe I might have said that. And I left pretty much in a daze. Went back to general population. And that place was no picnic. But I went, okay, rat trap popped. Went back to general population, cruising that place. And get your shit together. I guess that was my subconscious mission from then on out. Well, in my circulating that pod in the coming days, I picked up a book. Don't remember the name, but it was a self-help book. I believe the title was something to something to the effect of freeing yourself from inner anger or something like that. I found another one later, which was Houses of Healing. So I don't think that was a really good one that I used later on. But this particular one was going into detail to the effect that pent up emotions have on you, physically, emotionally. And it all made sense, but one detail came to mind, which really made me see, because I knew it had just recently happened to me while we were traveling on the big rig because of the turmoil that was happening on there. I developed this severely swollen throat. Could I was like, I mean, bad. I had strep before. I swore I had like a I swore it had like came back with a vengeance to get me. It was that bad. We ended up having to stop, go to a clinic. I got tested. They said no virus, nothing like that going on. So, so just kept taking the medicine and, just, you know, suppressant stuff. And it eventually got better. But in that book, it had said that was a symptom. That was your body saying, you're so mad you can't speak. And I just knew that's what that was at that specific instance, because I wasn't speaking when that happened. So there was a couple tools in there. It said, so how do you deal with that? It said one way, which I use because I said, well, if that is part of the problem, then I want to deal with it. It said, write letters to the problem, whatever who or whatever the problem is. Write letters to it. You don't have to send it, just write it out to express it so that it's not staying inside. So I did it. And needless to say, I was still partly retarded, mostly retarded. I was still mostly retarded. That was a wild ride. One thing I resolved not to do from then on was fight, which was easy to do. But I was trying not to do what I had been doing. I really was, despite being who I always had been. I just thought about it. I haven't fought since that last blow up. I haven't touched nobody. So, um, I went through that, doing the steps. I wrote letters trying to reconcile, which was stupid, but I was doing it anyway. I still did stupid stuff. Um, I believe within that 2 week span, I called my dad, collect on the phone, and I remember my conversation. I was because I was still mm-hmm, like just in a state of panic within myself. Uh, I was like cussing at my dad, just telling him everything that happened, and just totally uncomposed. But it was my language that bothered me because I was talking to my dad. I was like, why am I talking to my dad like that, right? Like like I was calling one of the homies or something. So I was like, that's weird. And so I resolved to deal with that. I said, okay, no more cussing, or try not to. So I did 50 push-ups per cuss word. while I was in there. So I would keep a list. I say it. I just write a 4 lines and a line between it, and I had quite a page. And I was working it down too. I was working it down till I remember getting to a point where it was just too many lines. I just knew I was like, you're you're gonna have to just stop, or you're never gonna catch up. So that kind of helped. By the time I got out, I was noticeably someone who just didn't swear anymore. So that was good. And real deep in my heart, at the bottom of my heart, I knew that if I wasn't doing everything I had been doing that was wrong, I wouldn't have the severity of the problems that I had. That's what I figured. Is that 100% true? It's mostly true. There's enough truth to it for me to roll with, and that's what I did. So that took me back to my upbringing, where you know mom was always trying to raise us to follow Bible principles. I knew that, just didn't want to do it for so many reasons. So I believe that's where I just naturally gravitated that way, because that was the point uh, that I could, there was a drawing there. You take that away, and I remember even those books, those self help books. A lot of them are Bible based or faith based, however you want to say it, or both. So I was noticing that in there. I was like, okay, right. Say, well, this principle, or if you believe in this. So that was helpful. And as I said, it was a wild environment in there. So it was trying to better yourself around mostly everybody who really looked down on that kind of stuff in the first place, and were actively seemed to be actively against it. So it was a wild time. I was just in the county. I ended up getting sentenced to 3 years, which was scary enough in itself. But it may not be a strong point. It may not. It may not be smart or string, but fearing people is not. It's not something I like doing. I know it comes, but it's not something that. Yeah. So I didn't feel too unsafe even being alone, because that's it just if I had to say what made me what makes me so angry, determined, and unshaken, I mean, just as a person, without external factors. What puts that in me? I just have to say that I grew up being physically hit and emotionally. Oh, I don't know what the word is. I won't say abused. 'Cause I don't know. It may have been, but I don't want to say it was abused. It definitely wasn't healthy. So I grew up in physically and emotionally unhealthy environments my whole life. So I've learned to find, I don't know. I just learned to cope with it in my own way. So that's served me in ways. I won't say it served me well, but it has served me. So funny part of the story that I didn't really laugh about it till later. And you wouldn't know this unless you were in the jail system and things, but it's, you get in there, you know how much time you're looking at, right, for what you did, and you're hoping to get that, that, and get out of here, don't do it again. You're always, it's what you want. If that, if if it wasn't me, don't get out of it, right? I didn't do nothing. I didn't do it, right? Anyway, so probably a month, because you're in there for a week or two. You're going to court back and forth while they're telling you what you did and what you're looking at and everything. So during that process, I prayed again. I don't even know if I should be sharing this one. This is a personal one, and I'm sure people have asked for worse things, but there's a there's a little caveat to being more specific in your prayers in it. So I'll share it. Uh, During the whole court process, I was like, looking at 3 years, and I had the potential of getting out in 90 days with probation, which I probably would have got if I hadn't acted such a fool. But I did, and I knew it. So I was hoping to get by that. So thankful I didn't in the long run. Thankful got held to it. So uh, because I'm looking at 3 years and don't want to hear that or do that, I'm praying. Can you get me out of here in 90 days? I'll do whatever it takes. I'll dedicate my life to you. You get me out of here in 90 days. That was my prayer. I remember it. That was the deal. Well, I got sentenced to 3 years. First, they sentenced me to 2 years. I thought that was bad. I was like, that hurt. A couple of days later, they called me back in and said, "Oh, we messed up. We meant to give you 3 years." Ah, that was funny. Uh, so end up, I got the full 3 years, and so that was soaking in. What can you do, right? So life was going on, and Yeah, I just kept doing what I was doing. There wasn't a whole lot of positive stuff to do. I worked out. I did my little reading, self-help book. Tried to, try to stay out of trouble. That's what I was doing for, while I was in there. There was a lot of drama going on in there, which specifically racial drama, which I had never seen before. Like in Sacramento jail systems and everything, I'd never seen that before, and I'd been in and out the jail system in Sacramento quite a few times, and I had never seen just flat out racist activity like that from the day one. I mean, I just had never seen it. I even like the first thing I said was, "That's racist." And they're like, "Where you come from, boy?" Not funny, but yeah, that's very first day. Don't sit there. That's the whites table. That's what they told me. That's the whites. Woo! Anyway, so yeah, that was the uh, spoiler alert. That was my full 90 days there in the county. I didn't know it. I was out on parole years later, and I was in the shower. I remember, and I was like, just I guess I was just thinking over everything, and I was like, wait a minute, what day did I leave? Because funny, it's funny. I remember it was July 31st. Okay, it was July 31st. I was arrested May 3rd. So I went and I counted the days for that particular year. Or what did May say? No. Wait, I'm pretty sure it was May 3rd. Anyway, I counted the days and it ended up being 90 days. I left on day number 90. Maybe it wasn't January 31st, but I had my books. I was a big journaler. I turned into a big journaler through all that. So I had a little pocketbook with all my days, and I tried to make little notes to myself each day. All the kind of stuff that I wish I was doing right now. Like I said, there's it's all on me to put it together, put some better things in the mix for myself. But that to say, I counted. I got out the shower and I counted, and it was 90 days that I left. Hmm. Took a van, high desert, Susanville. Got logged in. You go through a 10-day orientation. That's what particularly where I really started counting my days, because you start with a 10-day. What is it called? It's a 10-day orientation where you're not allowed to leave your cell or anything. They want to make sure you don't crack. You're not cracked up anyway, just from being there your first 10 days. So they just let you sit in your cell, bring your food and whatnot. And so, I counted each one of those days. I kept that little piece of paper for a long time too. But uh so you're sitting there. That's where I was at, was called a reception yard. That's where people come from, I guess, all over the region here. And from there, they they get chosen, if they're doing, depending on crimes and how long and things like that, they go to different facilities from there. So I'm in there, more racist activity, more more prison activity of what you would expect from a prison. I saw a few people who I knew. I didn't know them personally, but I knew them from growing up in Sac. There's quite a few of them. I saw one of them looking at 50 years. That's the memorable one, but yeah, just all kinds of stuff going on. Different stories, same stories. And it hadn't changed that I wanted better, but I had to work through that. So, yeah, I would have never known I would have worked through that. To tell you the truth, who I was then, I had no reason to hope that I was ever going to do any better. I didn't. It was just guts and determination to try. And they're working it out. To be honest, I had anger with the way the police ran. I may have shown everything, but I had this disdain for the way the prison system runs. Specifically, the surrogation, is that the word? Right? And uh, yeah. But they don't want you to come back, right? And a few of us don't go back. Some still do, but they don't make it an easy place, and that's what it's for. I get it, but maybe just being around, you know, certain behaviors. But it was like, and I think my attitude was sent that I was trying to do better, and that didn't go well. That didn't go well at all. In fact, I came close to having to defend that a little later on, but so I was in there and I just kept noticing things. You gotta follow certain rules because that's the way it is. Not laws, just rules of being in there. Okay, okay, to an extent, to the extent I have to so, follow the rules. hmm I ended up asking to go to fire camp because yeah, right. So off the bat, if it's not a super violent crime, you're eligible for halftime with good behavior. If it's a violent crime, you have to do 85% of your time. So I was eligible for halftime already. So that put me at a year and a half right off the bat. If you know there was no major mishaps, But I went to the fire camp, and that would knock you down to a third of your time. I wanted out like anybody else, but so I signed up for fire camp because I had wildland wildland firefighting experience anyway. I did wildland firefighting for I think like 4 seasons with a contract crew at a Granite Bay. Had a lot of fun. I liked the work. I was just young and unstable. So that was a pretty good job that I liked. I was good at. But so I said, hey, I'm gonna go to the fire camp. Okay. Uh, the reception went pretty smooth. I noticed in there it was a funny thing. They would put certain kind of individuals in the cell with me, particularly hard to deal with individuals. You know, they had strong personalities, and I didn't notice it till about the fourth or fifth one. It was just like a revolving door. They'd be in there for about a week and then out. I didn't get that. I didn't know I wasn't moving, right? But everybody else was. They're moving it out of my side. I didn't get that till later, but I just get, oh, it was a place. You know, they're looking to see where they were gonna fit in it, or something like that. But I don't know. I, I I just found it interesting. And like I don't have the complete answer to that, but I didn't see it happening much anywhere else. And I took it as something about myself, just seeing, the way I would interact with each one, because they were different, a lot of different individuals, a lot. Man, maybe 12 at least. And that I believe I was there till about September. I want to say August, September, November. Yeah, August, September, October. Yeah, it's about 3 months I was there. I just took it as something that, oh, good part of the story. One of the best parts for me. One of those cellmates came in, and like he walked in. They called him Frodo. Yeah, he was uh he was mixed, probably half white, half black, somewhere Puerto Rican and black or something. But he had this afro, so they called him Frodo. Anyway, so he comes in, he's unpacking his stuff, got attitude rounds, he's grumbling and they think of who they think of. I was like, And he's going through his stuff, right? And he goes, man, how'd that get in there? He's like, you want that? And he throws it on my bunk. It was a New World's translation of the Bible. I was like, because I've been reading the Bible, mostly I like the American Standard Version because it was plain English, right? I like that. That was the one I read and had been reading. Um, and I think I had one of those Old Testaments, or was it New Testament? It was a New Testament, right, where it had the Psalms and the Gospels in it. I believe I have that with me, but I didn't have the Old Testament, I think. Anyway, so he throws that down, and I am excited. I'm like, what? What? Thank you, man. Awesome. I was like, oh, look, it's got Jehovah's name in it. It's got Jehovah's name in it. And he's looking at me like, I think he's looking at me like he should have traded me for something for it because he saw it was valuable to me. But he had given it to me already. So that's how I got my New World's Translation. And even before that, I think I was sitting in there in the reception yard because it was fairly early in that. I was probably reading something, one of my books or something in the sale, and a magazine slid under my door, which was a watchtower. I have to go back and find the name of that watchtower, but I read it a lot, cover to cover, many times. It was one of a guy. He's in a sweater and he's looking over a pasture. I believe it was something about hope for the future or something like that. But just and it was an awake, so it was different articles in it. I read that a lot. And I think I talked to the guy, Gino. A lot of people knew him for going in the system, preaching. And he said they didn't do meetings or anything, but he would come in and bring more. I think I might have got maybe 2 more magazines from him during that time. That was probably the only good thing that came from any of the cellmates. That particular cellmate, Frodo, did have uh, interactions with witnesses in his past, but he was not. He wasn't hearing any of that, so that was short lived. Talking to him about that. Not that I knew much anyway, but like I said, what I could say is if we were following those principles, doesn't it sound like things would be better for us? That's what I could say with freeness of speech. So, but yeah, that was short lived. So, and needless to say, this whole time, even in the county, I was going to different religious activities, churches, uh, you know, different priests, ministers, which would you would have you would especially I think on Sundays, but you never knew who was coming, especially in the county. It would be somebody different almost every time. It was a couple. I think it might have been 2 or 3 nights a week. Might have even been every night. I don't remember. It was quite a bit, and they would have them less frequently in the reception, but it was everybody. You just had to go down if you wanted to and listen. But so I did that, and I was listening, and I heard what I heard. So there I am in reception, a couple months, knowing I'm going to fire camp, gonna get out early, and somehow it's gonna be okay. I'm hoping somewhat irrationally, but I got a game plan. It seems to be panning out. I'm trying not to do what I always did, trying to do better, and for the most part, I'm doing better. Just don't have a lot of affirmation, confirmation that I'm doing the right thing. But what else do I got? So that's what I was doing. Only other thing noteworthy I would say about that reception yard was the just sheer amount of individuals there. Lots of individuals, different kind of individuals. A lot, a lot of men there. Men, different levels of maturity, but a lot of men, all different races and colors there. Doing the thing. Be the So it's time for me to leave. Go to the fire camp in Jamestown, which is a training facility where they train the inmates to be wildland firefighters to go out on the fires. That's where I was going, Jamestown. So it's time for me to go. I get on the bus with all the other inmates going all over. They're making stops. Nice drive, listening to music, just driving. I think we might have stopped for a bathroom break. No, there was a bathroom on the bus too, but they stopped for lunch. That's where it was. They stopped for lunch to eat. So we sat there. Um, so and interesting. So it was November. It was November when I left. Interesting. Interesting enough. They dropped me off in Solano County to be picked up by another bus going to Jamestown. Not Solano County, Solano State Prison. Solano State Prison. Dropped me off there. When I get there, I think I was supposed to leave the next day or two. They go, we lost your C file. Your C file is your file. It tells you your everything. It has everything in it. I guess they should have just let me go, right? No, but so they lost. They say they lost my C file. So they had to put me in solitary confinement. I couldn't have anything. Anything I had, not one possession that I had, which I didn't have much, but my books and stuff to write. But I couldn't have anything because they didn't know who I was. And they put me in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. And that's solitary confinement. It was the rough kind because, as you could tell, it was the kind that wasn't planned. Uh, if you were going to shave or anything, if they let you use a razor, you had to give them that razor back. If you didn't give them that razor back, they gave you a year on your sentence. That's how serious that that lockdown was. Because they didn't want, no weapons or anything getting out or whatever. At least that's what they said. So, and there were signs on that too. It's like if you break the razor, call. If you drop the razor and it breaks, they say call the guard immediately and let him pick up the pieces. Uh, yeah, it was interesting. Um, there was some inmates in there that were, they got to roam around free, but they were lifers. I talked to the guy next door quite a bit. Forget where he was from or anything, but we just talked here and there. And it was extremely cold, so I basically slept that whole time because they kept it freezing cold. You didn't have much clothes. I think, whew, I think you had one layer. it was interesting. So I'm in there just for 2 weeks, wondering what was about to happen. 2 weeks later, they say, okay, no, no, I got it twisted. I got it twisted. Solitary confinement was at Jamestown. Yes, yes, I got it twisted right there. Solitary confinement was at Jamestown because I was out at Solano County. They lost my C file in that overnight switch or something. That's right. Because I was at Solano County, I was free to roam around. They had triple bunks in general population there. I got to go to the yard. I ran around. Rough looking place. I don't know what level Solano County is, but it was yeah. But again, I saw the way they kind of, unless unless they're trying to mess with you, they try to place you in the best place possible. They placed me with a older gentleman who really reminded me of my grandpa and somebody else. But the older guy was real smooth talking and everything. Like, I got to go to work, young man. But you stay, you stay to yourself. And, try not to get yourself in trouble, and you'll be okay. And then he'd be gone for most of the day. So I just went out to the yard when I could, exercised, ran around, read my books. And the reason why I know it was in November and I know I was out was because Obama became president one night while I was there, which was a bit of a situation there. But it didn't get too bad, but it was kind of intense there. So that's what made me know I had it twisted, because I spent, I think it was a couple of days there in Solano. hmm Maybe a week, maybe 3 4 days a week. Then I got on the bus, went to Jamestown. When I got to Jamestown, and this is where the doing the opposite really, I think it was one of my first chances to really just actually do the opposite. Because as they're intaking you into that facility, they ask you, what gang do you affiliate with, Bloods or Crips? I said neither. They said, you got to choose one. I said, I ain't choosing one. So you got to choose one. So you ain't going nowhere. Choose one. So I said Crips because I grew up around Bloods. So I said Crips. How's me with the Crips? Anyway, so after that, we're sitting, it's just how it works there. You always somehow end up sitting in a big cell with a bunch of people before you get to where you're going. So we're sitting there, and whenever I came up, they go, "Hey, they're like, you gotta go to solitary confinement. We don't have your C5." That's when I go to solitary confinement for 2 weeks. Yep. So I get out of solitary confinement. To get out of solitary confinement, I have I meet with the warden and a panel of what I believe are shrinks and other administrative people dealing with the prison. Definitely a couple doctors, but the warden and some other administrative people, a whole panel, and sitting there, handcuffed, freezing cold because I just got out the cell, and they're like, "How are you? How are you doing?" And I remember my exact response is, "I'm doing well." And they're like, "Hmm." And he's like, "You're okay? You don't, you're not a threat to yourself or nobody else." Questions like that. I'm like, "Nah." All right. They asked me a couple questions that I guess were leading up to what was about to happen. I think sexual orientation. So it just was like, just funny questions that seemed funny at the time, but I was like, no. Uh-huh. So I go back to another spot where we're sitting there waiting to go get housed. Now for fire camp, it's dorm rooms, about as wide as my barn, if not just a little. Yeah, about as wide as this barn, maybe a little longer, but because there would be a bunk bed here, and you got a aisleway, and you got bunk beds on that side, going down to the bathrooms and the shower. And in this end would be there's a TV, a ceiling fan, and I think like two more bunks are in that room. And that was each dorm. So, I don't know, 50, 60 inmates in there, easy. So we're handcuffed and we're walking in line. We're all in white. Well, I'm in white because I came from solitary confinement, which is a bad sign for inmates because it means you've had some problems for one reason or another. I think everybody else was in orange or whatever color where they came from, right? I'm in white, so that's not a good look right off the bat. But we get to the door of the cell, of the dorm I'm supposed to get into, and I'd heard him saying it to the other ones, but he was just like, when you go in there, you're going to be given a bunk. If you receive, if you refuse to accept the bunk that you're on, you're going to go to solitary confinement. You're going to lose the privilege to be here at the fire camp, and you're going to get shipped back to reception. I was like, okay, don't refuse your bunk. It's a no-brainer. I was like, I guess some people do. I didn't get it. So they kept saying that to everybody would go and people would go into their dorms. I was like, okay, I get to mine. He says the same thing. If you refuse your bunk, just come tell us that you refuse your bunk, and yeah, we'll take you back to reception. You can go back to the reception in High Desert, wherever they're going to send you. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I go in. He says, "Here's your bunk. Do you accept it?" There's a Mexican guy sitting on top. And I go, "Yeah." And I put my stuff down. A couple other people in there, they put their stuff down. So I think there's a little locker in between the bunk beds. I think it's split, double locker, bottom person, top person. So I'm putting my stuff in there, and I think it was the Mexican guy that got off the bunk and said, "No, you can't stay here. You got to leave." I'm not going nowhere. I was like, "Did you hear what he said?" I was like, I'm not going back to High Desert, and I'm doing fire camp, and I'm going home. Okay. Oh, it ain't like that, homie. But okay. Probably one of my favorite words that I should never use back then if I was trying to stay out of the trouble I was trying to stay out of. But I said, do what you do. And I stood up against, I got the locker to the wall here and I stood there, hands to the side, but, and he looked at me and it was, I think, two more Mexican guys and they looked at me and he said, we'll get him later. And they walked off. So they walk off. Another older black guy came over and he said, hey, look here, young buck, or whatever he called me. Hey, you're gonna have to get out of here, man. He said, if you don't get out of here, he's like, when they attack you, we gotta come protect you, and this whole place is gonna flip. He's like, it happened just over yonder not too long ago. He's like, they they come in after we're in here, fighting over this, and we all end up getting shipped out anyway. He was like, you just have to go. I was like, hey man, I'm not going nowhere. I thought they were gonna. I thought my own people was going to. So I took the position again. I was like, you guys just gonna have to take me out because I'm not going nowhere. So black guy went around the corner. I heard him talking to the other guys. And he came over again with a piece of paper. He said, look. He said, look. You see this? He said they write you up. They don't send you back. He said. He's like, nobody gets sent back right now. He's like, they say that to try. He's like, they're trying to instigate the situation. He said, but look, see, this is I refused once upon a time. This is my thing. I got a write up, but I get my time. I'm going to fire camp, blah, blah, blah. And everybody, people just start lifting up tickets all over every race, and everybody's all showing their ticket. And I go, okay. So I grab my stuff. They start clapping. And I walk and I tell them I refuse my bunk. There's some more interesting stuff about, but just to keep it moving. The guard that I told was obviously not in the right frame of mind, which I tried to use later to because the write up, you lost a lot of privileges for that write up. You lost the right to get your commissary. You lost all your good time up to that point for a particular amount of time. There was a lot of consequences for that write up. So I remember I was trying to go through the system trying to get that right because I wasn't refusing the bunk. It was the circumstances, but I ended up running into a real piece of work that was dealing with that situation. And again, just my ability just to suck it up and keep going prevailed there because that particular individual wanted to see the reaction of probably what I look like on paper to him. So all that to say, I go to the front door, refuse my bunk. They take me back to another holding cell. That whole process was actually pretty quick, but that little altercation in that thing gave me an unwanted reputation. Don't know what, but uh, just some examples. So I get We get to pretty much the reorientation cell where they're going to send you back out and hopefully put you on the right bunk. And that's basically what they were doing. They were getting you the write up. I don't know, to make money or so. I didn't, but it was a whole process. They'll put you on the right bunk the second time, no problem. But the first time they specifically mixed you up. I come to find out what had happened was the story anyway. That uh, two men of different races wanted to bunk together, and they weren't allowed to, so they sued the CDC and won, is what they're saying, and that's why they were doing all that. So that was the story. So was it a way to make revenue back? I don't know, because they were like taking your comps, they were fining you, taking commissary, things like that. So maybe they were making money. I don't know, but that's what it was all about. The second time they would put you in the bunk with your race, and everything was hunky dory. But so they take me out. They take me to the crypt, a crypt dorm, and right off the bat, he was, what's his name? Can't remember his name, but just he was one of the younger Crip OGs, and he goes, I get up there, and he's like, oh, what he said? Oh, this J Cat. He didn't. I didn't know him. Again, I was still in the white, so I thought it was because of my white. But come to find out, news travels pretty fast around that place. So uh, there was some testing going on, specifically because I got in there and I obviously wasn't not they could tell, but I wasn't a Crip, and I think I tried to pass away what they call unaffiliated, which they don't let you register as unaffiliated, but that's what you know. And it almost seemed like they hate unaffiliates worse than they do, their rival. But so I was in there as unaffiliated, and they did not like that. So I just had to mind my own business. It worked out. Uh, you're in there for a certain amount of time before they get you into what's called the FFT, firefighting training, FFTP, yeah, firefighter training program, where it's first, like 2 or 3 weeks of just marching, different exercises, mostly marching, push-ups, for your physical fitness. So you go through that, and then at the end of that, there's a physical test. You pass that, now you're able to go out and train out in the hills with a Cal fire chief who takes you out, trains you on how to use a tool, hiking, fire protection, things like that. You also have to go through, I think it was a week course too, which I had been through already. But so all that training you're doing while enduring the atmosphere in there took a while. Took a good long while, quite a few months. Quite a few months to start the training. It's like another month or two of training. Ah, yes. One day at yard in between there. I would say it was fairly early. It was fairly early, maybe within a month. I was out on the yard and I looked in the back of a inmate's pocket and I saw Live with Jehovah's Day in Mind book in his back pocket. I said, hey, where'd you get that from? Oh, they come in and they do meetings every week. Where? Oh, you got to sign up and they'll call you out. I signed up. Hmm. And I remember the first meeting. They had like it was a theater hall, but we only used a couple rows of the seats. But the brother that came in was going over a part of the watchtower. I might still have those notes. I almost remember the notes word for word, especially the beginning. He was talking about disquieting thoughts. It's circled on. Oh, mom's here. Hey, mom. Doing a video. So he's talking about disquieting thoughts. And I just know because I had all my notes I had for a long time. And I sometimes I didn't have anything else better to do than to go over what I've been writing. So I remember those notes. They're they're in there. So and here. But so this particular brother had a very like bad face tick, very, very pronounced. So obviously, had some issues going on just physically. But he's in there giving his time to come talk to us. There's about 12 to 15 other inmates in there besides me, and most of them are just asking him aggressive questions about blood issues, just you know Jehovah's Witness origins and on and on. Well, the brother was as calm as could be. And while he was trying to explain the one, answering this question, another one was blurting out a question before he can even finish. And he would, hey, I'm going to get to you. I'm going to get to you. This, I'm trying to explain his question first. And I know what you asked, and I'm going to get to that too. And that touched me something deeply because I don't think I've really ever had that kind of calmness, especially under that kind of stressor. It seemed like that emotional stress would always bring out the worst in me, I should say. So that touched me, and I saw that is something that I wanted. So probably the first time I ever saw something from somebody I really, really deep down, really, really wanted. And so I said, yeah, that's it. I'm doing the right thing. That's the right direction. I'm in the right place. So it was hard to get back to those meetings. I think I might have got to about five. There's a rotation of about three or four different brothers. I remember one brother there was talking, his wife was in a bad way, really sick, and he would, kind of talk to her. Everybody respected him more because he knew how to he told them what he was going through, and it kind of mellowed everyone out, and they give him condolences, and he would work that way, which it worked really well. Um, he read something pretty amazing to us. a couple times. I think maybe two stories stuck out. But one of the friends in his congregation, which was a Sonora Meadows congregation out there, uh, liked to write stories, kind of, but most of them were they were like from Armageddon into the New World. So they're writing stories about what life is like going through Armageddon and into two of them were pretty. The one in particular was the one where Armageddon was happening, and there's smoke and clouds. He's like real good writer, real good writer. You're almost there, see bombs and things like that, and this particular brother makes it to the Kingdom Hall. He knocks on the door, nobody's answering, and something makes him grab the handle, and he gets in, and it's dark, and you're like, anybody here? Like, we're here. Close the door. They close the door, and he goes, "Oh, I'm so glad the door was unlocked." And while he's talking to them, people coming there banging on the door and everything. And he goes, "Aren't you scared they're gonna get in?" He goes, people come and they'll be banging on the door and everything, but only one that's ever opened the door has been one of us. And it was a pretty interesting story. And then there was some other ones. That one I really liked. It was a real good story, but that was the gist of it. Um, yeah, that brother was memorable. So that was like a touchdown of hope, a a clear, what do they call it, checkpoint marker indicator there. So I think from that point on, I kind of, felt I was, on the right path. And had a greater sense of hope that things were going to work out. Didn't know how, but you know, again, felt like I was going in the right direction. So sometime after while going through that whole process of being trained and everything, I guess in the back of my mind, I was still wondering what I was going to do when I got out of there because I did not know. And I believe I already knew I had to parole to Red Bluff. They weren't going to let me go back to SAC because I had to stay in the county I was arrested in. I had to parole to that county and there was no transfer. I had to stay where I was at. I believe I was pretty sure on that. I didn't like it, but that was already made clear to me. So that was a major worry. So I remember one day, which I was in the habit of doing at that point, I got in the habit of in the morning just asking Jehovah to walk with me for the day. I remember I hadn't made it very far. For some reason, from from when I left out of the dorm to where I had made it, I hadn't made it out very far. But the siren went off. When the siren goes off, you hit the ground because something's going on around to where they just might start shooting from the towers. And if you're up, you're more likely part of the problem. So you drop. So the siren goes off. We all drop. And this was a particularly long drop. I mean, we had them before, but this one was a long one. And there was an inmate like right next to me. Didn't know him or anything. Um, and he goes, hey, I've been seeing you walk around. You look like you may be wanting to do something better for yourself. I was like, okay. What are you talking about? He goes, well, um, I've signed up for this substance abuse camp, fire camp. He's like, I just want to pass it along to you. It's for people, you go through the substance abuse program while you're there. And he was like, when you finally get out of the prison system, they offer you housing because you went through the program. Well, that's just, what I needed. Just what I needed to have a connection for the future, right? To know what was going to happen. So I said, yeah, how do I do that? And he said, well, if the camp's name is Baseline, you just tell them that's where you want to go. You go talk to the counselor, tell them that's where you want to go. And it's as simple as that, really. If you're not in any trouble, you can go. So I signed up. So at that point, I just had to finish the training and go to the camp. So the training was 2 weeks. I get through all that. Somewhere in between, before I got to the camp, uh, that write up got caught up with me. The write up from when I first got there. So they come in, they take all your stuff, and they move you to a disciplinary dorm because you got to write up. I'm a little bit foggy. I don't think I had finished the training just yet, but so I'm in there. I believe it was a whole month in the disciplinary dorm. They just let you out to eat. I don't think you get any yard or anything when you're in there. So it stunk, but it was just part of the process. But what I had found out is that even though you're on the right path and everything, you're in the disciplinary dorm, you're doing what you're supposed to do, there was a likelihood that when you got out of the disciplinary dorm, they were going to do it all over again and put you in the wrong bunk again. It had been happening around there to some people. So I said, okay. I had already resolved. I was like, look, I'm not refusing the bunk the second time. It was a you know minor miracle that I refused it the first time. So I was like, no way am I going to refuse it the second time. I don't care what's going to happen. So I started thinking it through. What are the consequences? Could possibly die. So I remember I wrote a letter to my mom, telling her what was going on. Sent it. I don't even know if she ever got it. I don't think she did. So, and I sent the letter to the warden, stating, you know, the whole process. I wasn't refusing the first time, right? Don't Definitely am not refusing the second time. So if there's anything he could do about it, can he see that I can get put on a proper bunk so I can just continue doing, serving my time properly And if not, then consequences are out of my hands at that point. So I did some hustling to be able to get the stamps for all that. Um, made copies, made copies in the copy rooms. Sent one. I sent one to my mom and sent one to the warden. I'm pretty sure the one got to the warden, but I ended up getting, I think, the letter to my mom and that copy of that letter returned to me later on. I don't think there was enough postage or some problem or something like that. But I think the warden got it. I don't know. I do know that when it was time to get rebunked, I got rebunked appropriately. Yeah, and then I was able to finish my training. And I went to the baseline fire camp that had a substance abuse program that you had to go to 4 nights a week. Went through all kinds of group and individual counseling centers. You had to do papers. You had to do your lots of papers on, and you had to present them in front of the group. Lots of self work and stuff. If you didn't, there was, I guess you just didn't progress in the program or something, run the risk of getting kicked out of it or something. But the brothers were coming in there doing in-person studies. They were actually, he was the brother that, well, those two brothers were coming in there studying the God's Love book with, when I got there, it was 3 other inmates. The most memorable one was Ray Ray, a Southerner. Ray Ray was crazy, but Ray Ray, uh, we kind of hit it off, and that was probably the only person I really associated with the most, which rubbed some people the wrong way because he was Mexican Southerner. I think even his people were mad at him, but Baseline was a lot more chill. They weren't gonna, there was no reason for them to push the politics because of this setup, but it was still there underlining, but because of why you were there, which is to get better, you had to put stuff like that to the side. So it worked out. So we end up studying. It ended up getting to a point where I was the only one there studying with the brother. I found a cache there of all kinds of literature. Someone had hidden a whole bunch of literature, magazines, books, Bibles, Revelation book, Great Teacher book. Whew, there was a lot of them. And I was just soaking it up, doing my notes, reading. I think I remember getting burnt out. I mean, I read so much that I couldn't really do it anymore as much as I was, but I soaked up a lot of it. And for the most part, I would write it out again in hand. I would read it and I'd write out just scriptures and just everything that sounded important. So I was doing that in my spare time when I wasn't training or exercising and doing something else. I did play pinochle quite a bit, but well, I ended up not having to go out on fire crews because I had the experience with firefighting already. I was able to go back to Jamestown with a fire captain and take inmates out for training. That was my job. Instead of going out and fighting fires, my job was to go and help training the inmates where I just came from. It's a pretty good gig. I just had to hike more than anybody else. They hike, for the training. I just had to, it was just constantly getting put through the rigors that the trainees had to go through all the time. That was probably the hardest part, but it's good exercise. So that was my job that I did for the rest of the time there. And then it was getting close to the time that getting about time to go. I was getting short, as they say. So, the worry was setting in. At this time, I remember I let my hair was growing quite a bit. I had braids, real short braid. It wasn't that long, but I was like, okay, time. I read that scripture about the external braiding of the hair and everything. And of course, that's for women, but I applied it to myself and just cut it off. So I was making any changes I could, and, what you might call progressing. So I was talking to the brother. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be getting out soon, and I'm just, I know I'll have a place to stay for a little while, but I just, I don't know. Well, the brother said, well, when you get out, first chance you get, go to the Kingdom Home. Talk to the service overseer. So I wrote service overseer in my God's love book. Time came to go. I got to what was, the equivalent of a halfway house that I was going to be staying in for, I think it was 3 months halfway, and then 3 months they call sober living, where you're just in a house with no supervision. The first 3 months is with supervision. The last 3 months was without. So I got to the first part, totally supervised all the time. They take you to, handle your business. If you do get to go anywhere, it's very limited on your own. So I think it was about 2 weeks before I was able to go anywhere on my own. First place I went was to the Kingdom Hall. Walked into the Kingdom Hall there on Red Bluff, sweating. It was a hot day. Had the Bible I had gotten, and that's about it. I had that Bible. And I walked into the Kingdom Hall. It was pretty crowded, but I walked straight in, shook the first person's hand who shook my hand. It's like, yeah, I'm Josh Smedley. He said his name. It's like, do you know my mom? Like, I know your mom. I know you too. It's like, you got a songbook? I was like, no. He got a songbook. You got a watchtower? No. Here's your watchtower. Took his pen and paper. You're like, where do you live? Okay, what's your number? All right, go have a seat. Well, be in touch. We'll start studying. Okay. I went and sat down. And that was my hug and my welcome back. That brother was in the congregation that basically we grew up in, the Norwood congregation in Sacramento. Him and his wife had been there briefly, not very long before I got there. He liked to fish, and he wasn't about much nonsense, if any. I love him dearly, dearly, and miss him dearly. So let's stop there. That was 2009, going into 2010. Hmm. I believe I got out in September of 2009, September or October, something like that. Hmm. I look at, I'm really understanding, especially about how fast I move or can move. It can leave some things to be sorted out. It's just something to be said about moving so fast. Hmm. Leaves a lot to be sorted out. Because even though I was working on myself and doing it, that takes time.